Part 1, The Unexpected Guardian. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Alan Chen shuffled forward, his weathered hands gripping a simple wooden cane. At 82, he was the oldest human to ever address the council, and certainly the only one to make such an audacious request. Behind him, visible through the chamber's crystalline walls, loomed the massive containment facility that housed the Nexus Beast, a creature so feared that even the Vraxian warriors, with their supposedly unshakable courage, refused to approach it. Honorable Council, Alan's voice carried clearly despite his age, I understand you've lost 23 handlers in attempts to contain this being. I believe I can help. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gathered representatives. The Ardaxian councilor's translucent tentacles flickered with disbelief. You? A human? And an elderly one at that? Alan's eyes crinkled at the corners. Yes. Precisely because I am both. The head counselor leaned forward, her iridescent scales catching the light. Explain. I spent 60 years as head keeper at the Singapore Zoo, Alan said, adjusting his grip on the cane. Specialized in rehabilitating aggressive predators. But more importantly. He paused, glancing at the containment facility. I recognized that look in its eyes. The Council's neural feeds projected imagery of the Nexus Beast, a writhing mass of obsidian scales and crystalline spines, its 6 eyes glowing with an intelligence that had terrified even the most hardened xenobiologists. The creature had been discovered on a remote world, its very presence causing sophisticated defense systems to shut down in terror. What look? The head counselor asked. Pain, Alan replied simply. It's not anger in those eyes. It's suffering. He straightened his back, suddenly looking far younger than his years. I'm requesting permission to enter the containment facility. Alone. No weapons, no barriers, no neural dampeners. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Vraxian representative slammed a clawed hand down. Impossible. The beast's psychic defenses alone have driven handlers mad. Alan smiled, the kind of smile that carried decades of hard-won wisdom. With respect, that's exactly why I should be the one to do this. You see, at my age. He tapped his temple. There's not much left up here for it to attack. And everything I do have? Well, that's all experience. The one thing the beast can't corrupt. The chamber erupted in chaos, but Alan's attention had already drifted to the containment facility. Through the walls, through the layers of security and force fields, he could swear he saw one of those 6 glowing eyes fixed directly on him. And in that moment, just for a second, the eye blinked. The head counselor raised her hand for silence. Mr. Chen, you understand that if we agree to this, we cannot guarantee your safety. Or even your survival. Alan's smile widened. My dear counselor, he said, his voice carrying a lifetime of quiet certainty, that's exactly why it's going to work. 3 days of preparation had done little to calm the facility staff's nerves. Alan watched them scurry about, triple-checking containment protocols and backup systems, their movements betraying their terror. Even through the reinforced observation window, the Nexus Beast's presence weighed heavy on their minds. Final systems check complete, Mr. Chen, announced Dr. Zenva, her crystalline form vibrating with anxiety. Though I must once again formally protest this course of action. The beast has exhibited unprecedented levels of psychic activity since your arrival. Alan nodded, carefully removing his watch, a 60th anniversary gift from his late wife, Lucy. That's because it's curious, he said, placing the watch in a storage locker. Just like that clouded leopard I helped rehabilitate back in '52. Everyone said she was too dangerous, too wild. Turned out she just had a thorn stuck in her paw. This is not a terrestrial predator, Dr. Zenva's voice crackled with frustration. The beast has resisted every attempt at containment. The Hadari's most advanced empaths were driven mad merely attempting communication. The Vraxian's strongest warriors were reduced to whimpering children. Even the hive mind of the ZXTLI couldn't. Because they all came in expecting a fight, Alan interrupted gently, retrieving something from his pocket. The small object caught the light, a simple wooden flute, worn smooth by decades of handling. When you expect violence, that's usually what you get. The facility's massive doorway began its opening sequence, layers of energy fields shimming as they reconfigured. Beyond lay the containment chamber, a vast space designed to house a creature that defied conventional physics. The Nexus beast lay curled in its center, a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. Alan took a step forward, but Dr. Zenvier's crystalline arm shot out to stop him. The psychic dampeners, she insisted. You must at least wear. No, Alan said firmly. Trust goes both ways. Either I go in as I am, or not at all. The beast's 6 eyes tracked his movement as he entered, each one glowing with an intensity that had sent hardened soldiers fleeing in terror. Its crystalline spines shifted, creating a sound like breaking glass that set teeth on edge. The air itself seemed to grow heavier with each step Alan took. He could feel it now, the pressure against his mind, the alien presence trying to find purchase in his thoughts. But where others had fought against it, Alan simply let it come. He opened his mind to the sensation, the way Lucy had taught him to open his heart all those years ago. Hello there, he said softly, continuing his slow approach. I'm Alan. And you're a long way from home, aren't you? The beast's spines bristled. In the observation room, instruments began screaming as psychic energy levels spiked. Dr. Zenvier's crystalline form vibrated with terror as she watched the human's seemingly suicidal advance. Alan lifted the wooden flute to his lips. The melody that emerged was one he'd played countless times in the twilight hours at the zoo, a lullaby Lucy had sung to their children, and later to their grandchildren. Simple notes carried across the chamber, echoing off walls designed to contain apocalyptic levels of force. The beast's movements slowed. Its 6 eyes blinked in an unsynchronized pattern, as if struggling to process this new development. The psychic pressure in the room shifted, from hostile to curious. And then, in a moment that would be studied for decades to come, one of the beast's crystalline spines began to resonate, producing a harmonic to Alan's melody. Behind the observation window, Dr. Zenvier's form had gone completely still. Impossible, she whispered. But Alan just smiled, continuing to play. Because he'd seen what the others had missed in their fear, the way the beast's spines moved not in aggression, but in patterns. The way its eyes tracked movement not as a predator, but as a performer. They hadn't been dealing with a monster. They'd been dealing with a dancer. Absolutely not. Security Chief Raxthor's exoskeleton clicked in agitation as he paced the conference room. First you remove the psychic dampeners, now you want to disable the containment fields? The beast could destroy half the station. 2 weeks had passed since Alan's first contact with the Nexus beast, and each day had brought new revelations, and new conflicts. The elderly zookeeper sat calmly at the conference table, his wooden flute resting before him like a conductor's baton. If it wanted to destroy the station, it would have done so already, Alan replied. Its psychic abilities far exceed our containment technology. The fields aren't containing it, it's choosing to stay. Dr. Zenvier's crystalline form shimmered with excitement as she projected data into the air. Mr. Chen's observations appear correct. The beast's neural patterns show increasing complexity. These structures here. She highlighted a pulsing section of the display. They mirror patterns found in advanced communication centers. And that's supposed to be reassuring? Raxthor's mandibles clattered. An intelligent weapon is still a weapon. Alan's weathered hand traced the grain of his flute. Tell me, Chief, have you ever actually looked at its movements? Really looked? The security feeds activated, showing footage from that morning's session. The Nexus beast's crystalline spines moved in intricate patterns as it responded to Alan's music, its 6 eyes tracking invisible points in space. These aren't random movements, Alan continued. They're choreographed. Precise. Like the court dances of the celestial emperors of your own world, Chief Raxthor. The security chief froze mid-step. How did you? I read. Extensively. The patterns match historical records of the Raxthori ceremonial dances perfectly. Just as other movements match the ritual forms of a dozen other species. Alan stood, his joints creaking slightly. It's not mimicking these dances, it's trying to show us it knows them. Trying to communicate in the only way it can. Dr. Zenvia's form pulsed with revelation. The psychic attacks, perhaps they weren't attacks at all. If its natural mode of communication is through movement and shared consciousness, then forcing barriers between its mind and ours would be like gagging someone and then demanding they speak clearly, Alan finished. We've been hurting it, and it's been crying out the only way it knows how. The beast's distant cry echoed through the station's corridors, but this time, those present heard it differently. What had once seemed like a roar of rage now carried notes of something far more familiar, loneliness. Raxthor's antennae drooped. The Council will never approve removing the containment fields. The political risk alone. Then we don't ask the Council, Alan said quietly. Not yet. First, we prove it's safe. I'll take full responsibility. It could kill you instantly. Alan's eyes crinkled with a smile that carried decades of hard-won wisdom. At my age, Chief, every day is a gift anyway. Better to spend it doing something meaningful. The security feeds continued to play, and now others began to see what Alan had noticed from the start. The way the beast's movements flowed like poetry. The way its crystalline spines caught and reflected light in patterns too precise to be random. The way its 6 eyes watched not with hunger, but with an almost desperate hope. Very well, Raxthor finally conceded, his exoskeleton settling into formal pose. But we do this gradually. One field at a time. And at the first sign of. The station's lights flickered. Alarms began to blare. Dr. Zenvia's form crystallized in shock as she processed incoming data. The containment fields, she whispered. They're failing. All of them. Simultaneously. But Alan was already moving, his cane tapping a steady rhythm as he headed for the beast's chamber. Because he'd seen something in that last security feed, something that changed everything. The beast wasn't trying to break free. It was trying to bow. Red emergency lights pulsed through the station's corridors as Alan hurried toward the containment chamber, his cane striking a counterpoint to the wail of sirens. Behind him, Chief Raxthor's troops deployed in combat formation, their weapons humming with enough power to level a small city. Chamber breach in 60 seconds. Dr. Zenvia's voice crackled over the comm, emergency transport standing by, Mr. Chen. We must evacuate. No, Alan's voice carried the same steady calm he'd used with frightened animals for 6 decades. Look at the power readings. Really look. A moment of silence, then Dr. Zenvia's startled gasp. The systems, they're not failing. They're being reconfigured. The massive doors to the containment chamber groaned open. Inside, the Nexus beast had risen to its full height, its crystalline spines creating a dazzling light show as they caught and refracted the emergency lighting. But instead of the chaos they'd expected, its movements were precise, deliberate. It's not attacking, Alan said softly. It's debugging. The beast's 6 eyes fixed on Alan as he entered, each one pulsing in sequence. The psychic pressure in the room built not with aggression, but with an almost desperate urgency. Images began flooding into Alan's mind, star maps, mathematical equations, and something else, music. Music unlike anything human ears had ever heard. Hold your fire. Alan commanded as the security forces took aim. "It's trying to tell us something." The beast's spines shifted, creating harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. The patterns of light they cast on the walls were resolving into recognizable shapes, star systems, planetary orbits, and "Dance," Alan whispered. "They're dance notations. The most ancient kind." Dr. Zenvier's voice trembled with excitement. "The equations, they're not random. They're choreography. Spatial mathematics that describe movement through dimensions we can't even see," Alan finished. He took another step forward, his aged joints protesting but his spirit soaring with understanding. "You're not just a dancer, are you? You're a teacher." The beast's response sent cascades of light and sound through the chamber. In that moment, Alan saw what no other human had ever witnessed, the true form of the Nexus beast, existing in multiple dimensions at once, each movement a lesson in the fundamental mathematics of reality itself. But something was wrong. The beast's movements were becoming erratic, its spines vibrating with increasing intensity. The very air seemed to crack with building energy. "Power surge detected." Dr. Zenvier screamed. "The station's containment grid is overloading." Chief Raxthor's mandibles clattered in alarm. "The beast is going to tear the station apart. We have to." "No," Alan interrupted, his eyes fixed on the creature. "It's not attacking. It's afraid. Look at its eyes, really look." The beast's 6 eyes were wide with what Alan now recognized as panic. Its movements, though chaotic, weren't aggressive, they were protective. It was trying to maintain the station's structural integrity even as its own presence threatened to overwhelm it. "The containment fields," Alan said urgently. "They're not just restraining it, they're hurting it. Like forcing a dancer to perform with broken limbs. It's trying to fix them, but..." A massive tremor shook the station. Warning klaxons screamed as systems began to fail, cascading through the facility. "Final containment failure in 30 seconds, Dr. Zenvier announced. Mr. Chen, please, the emergency transport." But Alan was already moving. Not away from the beast, but toward it. His cane clattered to the floor as he reached into his pocket and withdrew his wooden flute. "Trust," he said, both to the beast and to the watching security forces. "Goes both ways." And as the station systems counted down to catastrophic failure, Alan Chen, age 82, began to play a lullaby that his wife had once sung to their children. The same melody that had first connected him to this impossible being. Only this time, he didn't just play. He danced. The footage of what happened next would be studied for centuries to come. An elderly human, moving with grace that defied his years, dancing in perfect synchronization with a being that existed in dimensions beyond human comprehension. As Alan's simple wooden flute played Lucy's lullaby, the Nexus beast's crystalline spines created harmonics that stabilized the failing station systems one by one. "Remarkable," Dr. Zenvier whispered, her crystalline form vibrating in harmony with the music. "The beast isn't just responding to the music, it's completing it. Like a duet," Chief Raxthor finished, his mandibles slack with wonder. "A dance partnership." The station's alarms fell silent as the last systems stabilized. But Alan and the beast continued their dance, moving in patterns that seemed to bend space itself. Through their shared psychic connection, Alan began to understand more about his partner. The Nexus beast wasn't just one creature, it was many, a collective consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions. What they had thought were attacks had been attempts at invitation, offering to share the knowledge of movement between realities. Its crystalline spines weren't weapons, but instruments, teaching tools for a species that communicated through dance and dimensional mathematics. "It's a library," Alan explained later, his voice hoarse with emotion as he addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council. "A living library of all the dances ever danced, in every dimension, by every species. And it's dying. The council chamber erupted in chaos. The head counselor's scales flickered with disbelief. Dying? How? Loneliness, Alan said simply. These beings were never meant to exist alone. The others of its kind, they're trapped between dimensions, scattered across space-time. It's been trying to teach us the dances that could help find them, but our fear kept us from understanding. Dr. Zenva projected her latest findings. The human is correct. The beast's cellular structure shows signs of degradation. Without connection to others of its kind, it's losing coherence across dimensional planes. Then we should terminate the project, a council member declared. If it dies, the risk. No, Alan interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of wisdom earned through decades of working with endangered species. We can help it. The dance we shared, it wasn't just communication. It was connection. For the first time in centuries, it wasn't alone. He turned to face the massive viewing window where the Nexus beast floated, its spines creating patterns that seemed to write mathematics in light. We've been so focused on containing it, we never considered what it might teach us. About movement. About music. About the spaces between dimensions where reality itself dances. The beast's 6 eyes fixed on Alan, and through their connection, he felt its gratitude, and its fear. The degradation was accelerating. I request permission to remain with the beast full-time, Alan said, straightening despite his fatigue. To learn its dances, to understand its songs. To help it hold on until we can find its people. Impossible, the Security Council representative sputtered. The risk is nothing compared to the risk of losing what it could teach us, Alan finished. Look. He raised his flute and played a simple sequence of notes. The beast responded, its spines creating harmonics that made the council chamber's very atoms dance. In that moment, every being present felt it, a glimpse of realities beyond their comprehension, of dimensions where music and mathematics and movement were one and the same. But in that moment of connection, Alan also felt something else through their psychic bond. Something that made his aged heart skip a beat. The beast wasn't just teaching humanity to dance. It was preparing them for first contact with something far, far greater than anyone had imagined. 3 months had passed since Alan's dance with the Nexus beast. The containment facility had been transformed into what Alan called a conservatory, a space where the beast could move freely, its crystalline spines creating endless symphonies of light and sound. Other species had come to study their methods, but none had managed to achieve the connection that the elderly human shared with the interdimensional being. It's because they're trying too hard, Alan explained to Dr. Zenva as they watched another Vraxian attempt to replicate their success. The warrior's movements were precise but mechanical, lacking the fluid grace that the beast's dances required. They see it as a challenge to be conquered, not a partnership to be nurtured. But time was running out. The beast's degradation had accelerated, its magnificent spines beginning to dim. Through their psychic connection, Alan felt its increasing weakness, like a dancer struggling to maintain their balance. The cellular breakdown is spreading across all observed dimensions, Dr. Zenva reported, her crystalline form dulled with worry. Without intervention, we estimate total systemic failure within weeks. Alan nodded, his aged hands gripping his flute tighter. It's not just dying, he said softly. It's transforming. The dances it's been teaching us, they're not just lessons. They're preparation. The beast's movements had become more urgent, its 6 eyes glowing with an intensity that made the air itself shimmer. Through their connection, Alan had begun to understand fragments of a truth so vast it defied comprehension. The universe itself is a dance, he explained to the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Not metaphorically, literally. Reality moves in patterns we're only beginning to understand. And something is coming. Something that dances to rhythms that could tear our dimension apart. The council chamber erupted in panic, but Alan continued, his voice steady. The beast and its kind, they're not just teachers. They're guardians. They maintain the harmony between dimensions through their dances. But they've been scattered, separated. And now, a violent tremor shook the station. In the conservatory, the beast's spines flared with brilliant light as its movements became erratic. Multiple dimensional anomalies detected. Dr. Zenvier's voice crackled over the comm, the fabric of spacetime is fluctuating. Alan was already moving, his cane forgotten as he hurried to the conservatory. Through the viewing windows, he could see the beast writhing in what looked like agony, its spines creating discordant harmonics that made reality itself shiver. It's not dying, Alan realized, watching the patterns of light and mathematics that the beast's movements created. It's molting. Like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. But the process is killing it because it's alone, Dr. Zenvier finished, her sensors capturing the cascade of dimensional energies. The transformation requires a harmonic resonance that can only be achieved through dance, Alan said, reaching for the conservatory door. Through partnership. Chief Raxthor's mandibles clattered in alarm. The energy readings are off the scale. If you go in there now, then I might die, Alan said calmly. But if I don't, we all will. Because what's coming isn't just a threat to our dimension. It's a threat to all of them. He stepped into the conservatory, feeling the weight of multiple realities pressing against his aged frame. The beast's eyes fixed on him, filled with both pain and hope. Alan lifted his flute to his lips, playing the lullaby that had first connected them. But this time, he poured everything into it, his love for Lucy, his joy in their children and grandchildren, his lifetime of caring for creatures others feared. The beast's spines began to glow brighter, responding to the emotion in the music. And as Alan began to dance, he felt something he'd never experienced before. The beast wasn't just harmonizing with his movement. It was sharing its power. Reality itself began to bend around them as they danced, and through their connection, Alan finally understood the full truth. The beast hadn't chosen him because he was fearless, or wise, or even kind. It had chosen him because humans were the only species young enough to still remember how to dream while dancing. As Alan Chen danced with the transforming Nexus beast, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The conservatory had become a nexus of dimensional energies, waves of light and mathematics flowing from the beast's crystalline spines in ever more complex patterns. Through their shared connection, Alan felt the creature's essence changing, evolving into something beyond even its own understanding. Dimensional breach imminent. Dr. Zenvier's voice barely penetrated the symphony of energies surrounding them. The station structure can't handle. But Alan wasn't listening. In that moment, as he moved in perfect harmony with the beast, he understood everything. Each step they took together wrote new equations in the fabric of spacetime. Each note from his simple wooden flute unlocked another layer of reality. The beast's 6 eyes blazed with light as its transformation reached its peak. Its crystalline spines began to shift, not just reflecting light but bending it, creating doorways between dimensions. And through those doorways, Alan saw them, the others of its kind, dancing their eternal dance through realities beyond human comprehension. They were never trapped, Alan gasped, understanding flooding through him. They were waiting. Waiting for a species that could learn to dance between worlds. The beast's form began to dissolve, not in death but in transcendence. Its physical shape expanded, becoming a living constellation of light and motion. Through their connection, it shared one final truth: humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their adaptability, or even their courage. It was their ability to find wonder in every stage of life, to keep dancing even when their bodies grew old, to understand that wisdom wasn't about knowing all the steps, it was about having the courage to improvise new ones. Multiple dimensional signatures detected. Dr. Zenvier called out. They're harmonizing. Through the conservatory windows, the gathered council members watched in awe as reality itself began to dance. The beast's transformed essence reached out through the dimensional gates, connecting with its kin across the multiverse. Their combined movements created a symphony of physics and mathematics that made the very atoms of existence sing. And at the center of it all, an 82-year-old human continued to dance, his movements guided by a lifetime of understanding that the most important connections transcend physical limitations. When it was over, when the dimensional energies had settled and the new reality had stabilized, Alan found himself standing before the Galactic Council once more. But this time, he wasn't alone. The transformed beast, now a being of pure light and crystalline energy, moved beside him in perfect harmony. Mr. Chen, the head counselor, spoke, her scales shimmering with emotion. You've done more than save a single life. You've opened doorways between dimensions, established contact with a civilization beyond our comprehension, and demonstrated that wisdom can come from the most unexpected sources. Alan smiled, his aged face serene. Not wisdom, counselor. Just the understanding that every living thing, no matter how different it seems, just wants to dance with someone who isn't afraid to learn new steps. The transformed beast's light pulsed in agreement, its consciousness touching the minds of all present. Through their connection, it shared visions of the dance to come, a grand ballet of species and civilizations, moving together through dimensions in ways that would reshape their understanding of reality itself. And the threat you mentioned? Chief Raxthor asked, his mandibles twitching nervously. The danger to all dimensions? Still coming, Alan acknowledged, reaching for his flute. But now we're ready for it. Because the greatest power in any universe isn't force, or fear, or even knowledge. He played a single note, and the transformed beast's crystalline essence harmonized with it perfectly. It's the willingness to take someone's hand, or tentacle, or energy field, and say, "Shall we dance?" Around them, reality itself seemed to smile as the transformed beast began teaching its first lesson to the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council. And as Alan watched diplomats and scientists, warriors and scholars all learning to move in harmony with forces beyond their comprehension, he thought of Lucy, and their first dance together so many years ago. She had taught him then what he now taught others, that love, like dance, knew no boundaries of age or species or even dimension. That wisdom wasn't about having all the answers, but about being brave enough to keep asking new questions. And most importantly, that the universe's greatest miracles often came wrapped in the simplest packages, a wooden flute, a kindergarten teacher's lullaby, and the courage to see beauty where others saw only fear. The transformed beast's light pulsed one final time, sharing a truth that would echo through all dimensions. In the end, we are all dancers in the cosmic ballet, each bringing our own steps to the eternal dance of existence. And sometimes, the wisest partner is the one who remembers that every dance, like every life, is both an ending and a beginning. All you need is the courage to keep moving, one step at a time, even when the music changes.